Pop Cult Online Power Hour, the video podcast dedicated to the 10-year-old in all of us. And I'm your host, Rick Gordon. We're back after a short or maybe long hiatus, but I'm going to have to leave again, but just for a moment, so we'll be right back after these messages.
Here's Milky, the marvelous milking cow. It's fun to milk her, gonna do it right now. She drinks the water when we pump her tail. She's raising her head, it's milking time now. Her pretend milk is a feeling the pail.
She drinks water and gets pretend milk.
Milky, the marvelous milking cow. Milky, the marvelous milking cow with pretend milk tablets. She's new from Kenner.
Recognize it? This is the world you live in, packed with simple pleasures, places to see, people to love. And Pepsi-Cola is the one cola that belongs with every happy, hopeful moment you live.
It's the Pepsi generation, coming at you, going strong. Put yourself behind the Pepsi. If you're living, you belong. You've got a lot to live, and Pepsi's got a lot to give. You've got a lot to live, and Pepsi's got a lot to give.
You Fly It, a brand new skill toy from Shopper. Compete with your friends for perfect landings, cause you control the speed of the Piper Twin. You control the glide, and you control the landing. You Fly It is just as exciting indoors. The plane glides along a line that you control from a cockpit. You fly the plane for a perfect landing. And with practice, you can pilot the plane around and over obstacles. You cleared it, but oh, you goofed the landing. You Fly It is Shopper's new action skill flying toy that you can fly outdoors or indoors. Fly the scale model plane on a 40-foot glide line and try to land it on a 6-foot runway. You Fly It with cockpit, scale model plane, 6-foot runway, and 40-foot guideline. From Shopper, the Cootie Company.
Hello.
Iron Rick Gordon.
All right. You're going to have to let me know what the video quality is because I can't tell from this end.
Well, you're not lagging all over the place like last night.
Okay.
So that looks a lot better.
That's weird. My speeds are the same. There's been no improvement. So I got to believe that it's something at the cable end. Thank you, Time Warner. So, all right, let's do a show.
Cool. Very cool.
All right, it's that. So, what's new and exciting in the world of Bob Retail?
Started getting addicted to a mobile phone game, which is never a good thing.
Which game is that?
Game of War, Fire Age.
I've been seeing ads for it. Tempted to try it. I've never really got into the MMO type games on a mobile platform.
This is not like it's not like a platform MMO. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a builder. I mean, I like it more for the building aspects than fighting aspects. I used to play a game called Castle Age on Facebook. It's a lot similar to that game.
Well, I know nothing about it, so just walk me through. Try to sell me this game.
I don't know if anybody should be sold this game. You start playing it, and it's just like No, I mean you build up resources and you build up heroes and ultimately you do battle, but I am far less amused with the battle portion of it because there are just dudes on these servers who have been playing the game for so long, and they're probably 15 years old. They've optimized their account so that they will just crush you like a grape if you screw with them. So, the idea is you get in an alliance and kind of keep your head down while you build up. That's kind of the mode that I'm in. I just like building the different, you have like a city, and you have different buildings. You got a stronghold that's your castle, and you've got different, villas in the city generate silver, and barracks. You can build all different kinds of troops for when you go to battle. Outside the city, you can build farms for food and mines for ore, and quarries for stone, and lumber mills for wood, and you use these materials to build pretty much everything else.
I guess,
and then there's just very detailed skill trees where you have to pick and train all these different skills, and the different skills that you train mean that you do certain things better. You find little bits of material all over the place, which you can then use to craft, little tchotchkes that you can stick on your hero and give him extra abilities. I mean, it's very, very rich. You can play it at a very superficial level, kind of at a intermediate level and an advanced level, and I'm like maybe the low end of intermediate at this point. I learned a bunch of stuff, but if I tried to like fight somebody, I would get just totally creamed. I got kicked out of my first alliance because I grew too fast, and I dared question the leader of the alliance on the chat, and he moved the alliance. We were near this alternate alliance that liked to beat on us, and they couldn't make friends, and so he had everybody teleport their cities. They have this teleport function, so he had to teleport way to this other place. So we did that, and then after he had a bunch of people in the alliance teleport over there, I went to donate materials to the Alliance city, because you can build a city for the Alliance that gives it bonuses, and you build things in it. And then I got told, oh, you can't march your troops to the Alliance city because it's too far away. I mean, and I'm like, I was like a mid-level character. I was like, level 15 or something, but a lot of people in the Alliance were lower level than I was. And so I'm like, maybe it was not a good idea to have everyone teleport so far away that they can't get to the Alliance city. And, can you move the Alliance city up to where we are? And he's like, oh, there's no ability to move the Alliance city. And it's like, oh, that showed a lack of foresight, and I should have never said that, because then the next thing I know is during a kill event where where kingdoms fight against each other, he booted me out of the alliance, and I was like left swinging in the wind.
Wow.
And some guy from another kingdom came in and just like crushed me like a grape. Like my hero got thrown into jail, and it's like, I found a new alliance, and
it sounds like it's fun. The only thing I have that's even close to that is the Family Guy Quest for Stuff game, and it's basically the same thing. You start out with just a blank slate, and you build a city, build a community. All the characters have tasks. There was an Archie and a Riverdale version of that, whole concept that I played for a while. But it was kind of weird because they have them all driving around in electric cars, and there's solar panels on all the house. So it's like some hidden messages in the game.
Well, all these games are very similar. There's a couple of templates for these kind of games, and they they tend to, it's like this Game of War is very similar to Archie, although they're probably not fighting each other in Archie.
Right.
They're just doing the building part, which actually I would
No,
probably like better.
they
Or do
don't
fight
fight.
each other?
No, they date. That's what you can have the various
Love
characters.
is a battlefield, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You get rebuffed by Veronica or something.
So just for fun, I tried sending Archie and Reggie out on a date, to see if the Kevin Keller effect had seeped into the games, but it didn't take them out to. It took them out to a movie just as bros. So it was kind of somebody was thinking ahead when they were programming that one. But
Okay.
yeah, same thing. You build a house, you upgrade the house. You build roads, you upgrade. Build, and the more buildings you build, the more characters you get, and then you have to especially in the Family Guy version, there's different outfits for different occasions. Like right now, there's a Star Trek Next Generation occasion going on, so you get to go in the Enterprise and do stuff, and everybody's in costumes. So thematically, it changes. So that's one thing I like about that. Whenever there's a holiday, the whole world changes.
Yeah,
and you get compelled to play it because you're constantly accruing points, clams,
and
jewels,
things take
whatever.
time,
Right.
Things, like you kick off a build, and that build takes X amount of time, and the higher level it is, the longer it takes, and you can get various things that'll, speed up the timer.
Yeah, which costs you money.
Quests. Well, sometimes they do, or you can do like quests and other things that reward you with these things, but you can also buy them. And that's the part that's insidious, is the monetization of the game, and right after I started this, and I got like a $4.99 pack, and it's just like the crack pushers, right?
Give you a taste.
When you first start the game, they've got this really awesome pack for like $4.99, and it's like it had like 20,000 gold pieces and all these, timer speed ups and all kinds of junk. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty good, and it helped me level up a bunch of levels. But then the next time you go to buy a pack, it's like $19.99, and it's about, it's like, oh, okay, I don't know. And then after you level up a little higher in the game, all of them are like $49.99, and I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
$9.99, and it's like, I don't know, maybe there's got to be some psychology to it, and people must be buying them, and it must be the case that they make more money, like with one person buying the $50 pack as opposed to 10 people who would buy the $5 pack. Because if they kept having the $5 packs, I would have probably bought a couple more of them. But when the price went up, I'm like, I don't think so. It's like I can spend $5. It's kind of like, you're buying a cup of coffee, a big latte or something, or, it's like 2 comic books, or, there's a variety of things that you can do, and you can justify a certain amount of money.
Yes.
Then when it becomes this much greater quantity of money, that's where you're then stepping back and thinking. And I always thought it's like a dangerous thing when you cause the consumer to have to step back and actually start considering why they're spending this money, as opposed to it just being an automatic impulse buy. And there's like a certain threshold. That's why iTunes was so successful, I think, by putting all the music at 99 cents, and, or they raised it after a while, but, the 99 cents is such a no-op kind of cost for people that it's like, if you want something and it's 99 cents, most people will say, screw it, 99 cents, boom, and they just buy it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, whatever, it's just 99 cents. But when it's, in that case, if it was like $5, people would be, I don't know, $5, It's like ringtones and other kind of things. There's like a whole psychology to it where there's a certain price point that people will just spend the money and not, it's just an impulse. And then like a higher level of money, far fewer people will buy it, but there's got to be some kind of ratio there where, again, on this Game of War, there must be people buying these $49.99, and they have $99.99 packs too. And I'm like, really? $100?
Well, here's...
And that's what I think that like these people who are like uber powerful in the game, they've probably, because it would take years to, build up without spending money, that level of power. So I don't know if they're just like kids whose parents are totally rich or something, or, whatever. But,
I think,
there's...
some of it could be, especially with hardcore gamers. I don't consider myself hardcore because I have a lot of trouble paying $50, $60, $70 for a console game. That's right. Difficult for me. So my threshold is I can see spending... Not that I would do it, but I can understand the thinking behind spending $49.99 on a game that you play every day, a couple of times a day, and it's always with you, because that is the price of a console game that you do not play as much. So there's like a perceived value that goes with it.
Right.
And the other threshold is... There have been times where I've gotten frustrated in a game, that I've been stuck on a particular level for literally weeks. And if I get to a point where it's so close that 99 cents, $2.99, $3.99 is going to get me out of that rut and push me over the level, yeah, I really, I'll do it. But for me, the way I rationalize it, the money that I'm giving to unnamed developer, if that same amount was lost in the course of my day, at what point do I start looking for that money? Like, if I misplace $2, I'm not going to go out of my way to look for it. 3, 4, 5, 5 maybe I start turning things over. 6 to 10, I'm in a panic. There's a $10 bill floating around, I want it back. You know what I mean? So $10 I would miss. $2.99? No. Like you said, it's the price of a cup of coffee. So,
and I also think it's like, when you compare it to a console game, right? That's an interesting comparison, because you pay $50 for a console game, and in theory, you have that game, and I guess you could give it to a friend or something. But my kids get a console game, and they've got a lot of those games for like Xbox and PS and all the different Wii and all these different platforms that they've had over the years. And they might have played that game for one time or two times, or the both of them played it, or they go through it again after they went through it once. But there's a certain amount of time that it takes to go through one of those games, right? And the better gamers, like I went through Fallout in, 80 hours of gameplay or something. And they might play it a couple of times. So it's like, okay, so you figure you get like 200 hours of gameplay out of this game, and it was $50. So, that's not bad. That's a quarter an hour. That's actually pretty economical entertainment if you look at it that way. And that's what you got to look at on these other games too. I mean, if you're fiddling around with them for a certain amount of time, a couple hours a day, and you play them for X amount of time, what is that worth to you?
Right.
It actually can be, you can rationalize yourself on these, into making a purchase, right?
Well,
on one of these things.
Yeah, because it's almost, it's kind of weird what they're selling, this virtual tchotchkes. It's something about it. It's like a unit. You're not buying time spent. I'm buying 6 of these for a certain amount of dollars, and you can rationalize that in your head. Well, I'm getting 6 of these for a certain amount as opposed to, you want to play longer? Just give us another $2.99. You know, I think they've made it more palatable to do these in-app purchases like that.
Yeah, and like on an Android device, you've got an iPhone, so I guess it's hooked into like the iTunes store or something. I mean, these are all hooked into the Google Play Store where you have to, you know, you have your credit card hooked up basically.
Right. Well,
to
yeah,
the Play Store. And it's very simple. It's like, oh, do you want to buy this thing? And it's like, you know, click here.
Yeah.
And it's like, boom, you know, the money's gone.
It's exactly the process, and I think on the new iPhones it's even easier because I just did it not too long ago, where I wanted to buy something, and I literally just put my fingerprint on the sensor, and the deal was done. Wow. So, imagine being 18, 19, 20-year-old punk kid with impulse control problems. You're next thing you know, it's an extra
50-year-old guy with impulse control. I can only imagine. You know, it's like none of these things were quite that easy when you were, you know, when you actually were younger. Mm-hmm. It's just, you know, these are challenging things. You know, it's just like. And these companies, they exist. They're very, let's say they're very optimized to take your money from you. Mm-hmm. You know, they know how to do it, and they're pretty efficient at it. You know, it's like, I'm going to extract money out of my customer base. I mean, hell, you know, when I worked for this mobile phone app company, they had it's since this market is like swiftly going away. Mm-hmm. You know, they did the mapping apps on for a variety of companies, and like on Verizon, they've got this VZ Navigator mapping app, right? And that was one of the ones that this company built, and it was like at one point early on, I think it was before I started there, it was like $9.99 a month or something. And then it went to like $4.99 a month. And, you know, but over time, you know, Google Maps is free, and Google like threw billions of dollars probably into, you know, all kinds of research and development and put together their free mapping app. So who's going to buy this thing for $4.99 a month?
Right.
When Google is, you know, 80% is good or 90% is good for free. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'll tell you who's buying it is people who had it attached to their Verizon bill, and they don't even notice that it's on there because they don't really.
Right, they just pay the bill.
Verizon bill, they just pay their bill every month.
Right.
I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people that have this thing sitting on their bill, and they probably aren't even aware.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
This fabulous revenue stream for the company. Every month in comes this giant pile of money. Mm-hmm. I had the same thing when I got my new phone. You know, it's you know, try visual voicemail, you know, and it's like you click on it free for the first X amount of time, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it like automatically starts billing, and you forget about it. And then I get my bill, and I'm like, what the hell is this? You know? Oh, I forgot. And you have to call them up and go through the process of getting it taken off your bill.
I am terrible at that.
Off, you know, but.
Yeah, they always get guys like me because I'll see a really good deal on something, you know. Something I've been looking to buy. Let's just, for instance, say, oh, there's a Superman mug on, you know, XYZ.com, and, you know, I can get it for $30 less than normal if I sign up for this, and then, you know, for their free trial, and then cancel at the end of the month, which I always forget to do. And then next thing you know, you're 2-3 months into it, and you're like, where the hell have these charges for $19.99 come? And just some vague 800 number. And the next thing you know, I'm drinking coffee out of a $100 mug.
Well, I'll tell you what, I did the same thing. It's like, I bought my Amazing Fantasy 15. And I don't know, did you read the blog I did on
Yes.
buying my, okay. So, if you looked at the blog, that I talk about this thing called GPA analysis on there. And GPA analysis, for people who collect comics, is a really, really good thing if you're going to buy kind of high dollar vintage, comics, especially CG Seed comics, because GPA analysis, they track not every single sale, because if like I buy a CGC comic from Joe Blow on eBay that's not hooked in, and well, actually, if it was on eBay, they'd record the sale. But if I go to some random comic shop and buy a CG Seed comic, and that comic shop dealer is not hooked up with GPA and reporting the sales data back to them, then it's not on there. But for the most part, they get most of the sales in there. So, okay. That means that if I'm going to buy, Amazing Fantasy 15, and I kind of want to know, and, there's so many different grades, right? You got a 4.0, you got a 4.5, 5.0, and maybe it's restored. And if it's restored, it's got professional restoration, minor or moderate, or, it's got a signature on it, or it's, whatever. I mean, there's so many variations that are possible. And for high dollar books, it makes a huge difference in the price. And I'm not talking about books that are like $50 books. And even those, I mean, it's useful to know, is this a $50 book or is it a $200 book?
Right.
But, if you're going to buy something that's several hundred to several $1,000s, which is in my case, several $1,000s, you kind of want to know
you're not getting ripped off.
Work.
Yeah.
So I joined up on GPA because, when I'm talking to people and doing my research, all these people are telling me, oh yeah, you gotta get in with GPA, man. You gotta know and be smart about what you're buying, or else you're usually not going to pay less, because believe me, people who are selling CGC slabbed comics, for the most part, are all hardcore into this stuff, and they know a lot. So if you don't educate yourself and similarly make sure you know a lot, you are more than likely going to get, taken advantage of by,
to say nicely
by these people. So, in you come, and okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I do that. So I sign up for GPA analysis, and I figure I'm going to be on it while I'm buying this Amazing Fantasy 15 for a few months. And it's like 10 or $10.95 a month. But it was the same thing. I figured, I'll cancel it once I buy the book, and then I don't need it anymore. And I forgot to cancel it. And then the next thing I know, I'm looking at my bill in February, and I bought the damn thing back in December, so I paid like 3 months of this, $11 a month, and I hadn't been using it after that. There's a lot of things like that. You kind of, the subscription model is, that's just another thing. Like, the person who came up with that is, someone who belongs in the Marketing Hall of Fame.
Oh, definitely. With
the guy who invented the 99-cent, the $9.99, which I always translate to $10, but so many people just say $9, it's like, no. Or, the bizarre gas thing where they put the 9/10, they won't even give me the penny. They make it 1/10 of a cent different. So you think it's like the penny cheaper. It's just like, man,
gypsies, tramps, and thieves.
All those guys.
This conversation reminds me of the picture you sent me recently of the kid with the two-man submarine.
Yeah.
That I want to put that back up because that is the first time I've seen that thing. I mean, I've seen the ad all my life, and
Yeah.
I thought at the time that would be cool, but then as I got older, I kind of like, it's probably garbage, probably just a plain box. But looking at that picture, the thing looks awesome.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is, I mean, people who've looked at an old comic book and you see those ads in the old comics for, like a amazing two-man sub, and then you hear that it's just like this cardboard thing, and you think, oh, that's probably crappy. Well, I actually found on the internet a picture of it out in somebody's yard, and it was an actual photograph of the two-man sub, and like you said, it was pretty cool looking.
Yeah, it was definitely, I would have loved it.
If it rained, you'd be screwed.
It would have been nice if
that in your yard in Florida.
Yeah, it'd been nice if they had somebody had Super 8 footage of that, because I wanted to see if the missile, the atomic missile, could launch from it, like it said, so you could threaten your Russian neighbors across the street.
Jeez.
So that got me thinking. I know we had talked briefly about it before, but I don't think you've ever bought anything like that off of a comic, have you?
I have never bought, when I was a kid, I never bought something out of a comic. I would always look at the ads in the comics. Mm-hmm. I was always incredibly fascinated by
X-ray specs.
Well, just looking at them, I liked the different things. I always liked those little, get like an entire Roman legion for $1.99, mm-hmm. or the Civil War soldiers, or the Army men, or all the different moon men, cowboys and Indians. And they're little plastic soldiers, but still, there's always like hundreds of them.
Yeah, that was the count. Yeah, it was like 150, over 250 Roman soldiers.
Or some big thing. And I'd always look at them and say, wow. They always list out, it's like 4 riflemen, 3 cannoneers, you had like Napoleon's armies, and they're all different kinds. I was always fascinated by those, but I never, why? Because I think I don't think you could send cash in. Did you need a check or something? And my parents would never give me a check to send into something like that. Be like, you're out of your mind. You're not going to do that.
You could send cash, because the few items that I did get, I put them in an envelope, but I, folded up the paper because I didn't trust the mailman. According to my parents, everybody are thieves. So, yeah, I did, tape some bills and took an index card and taped the coins, the exact change, onto the card and slipped that in the envelope. So, because just like your parents, mine wouldn't. I don't even think I even saw a checkbook in that household. I knew there were some, because they'd pop up every now and then, but yes, we didn't have keys to the coffers.
Well, what I would do is a couple of times I would send that stamped self-addressed stamped envelope, SASE, right?
SASE, yep.
And I would get the list from the place selling the comic books.
Yeah.
And I would get this. This was in the days before there were comic book shops, mm-hmm. and before, at least, I don't think there were conventions outside of New York. I mean, you were in the New York area.
Yeah, small shows, but
certainly none where I grew up, and there were no avenues for getting that stuff other than if you'd find a used bookstore or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even, I think probably were putting out an Overstreet price guide at that point, but I had never seen one.
Right.
And so, just getting this list that had all these different comics on it, and it's mm-hmm. like, wow, look at, but I never sent in, and, I never ordered anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have tons of entertainment getting these lists and just looking at them. And saying,
discovering titles that you didn't know existed, because
I would always, spend my money on new comics. I mean, I'd get, when I'd get a couple of bucks, I would just go to the store and a comic was 15 cents and then it's 20 cents and I would just buy, 10 comics off the rack as opposed to, having to buy this and then paying postage and all that kind of stuff. And but I could get 10 comic books, I'd maybe only get one comic book.
Right, yeah, that's one way. Yeah, I didn't even think of it looking at it that way. Wow. Because I was always aggressively searching for books, the way I do now. And like you said, there were no stores, there were no comic shops per se, and once you made your weekly run to the pharmacy and the convenience stores, that's pretty much it. You're done. Unless, just by happenstance, you run across them. Maybe you'll see them in a barber shop or...
Did grocery stores have a spinner rack?
No, not at all.
Out here, where I grew up, all the grocery stores had spinner rack.
Wow.
So I had a lot of different places. I mean, because there were my mom, she loved to shop with the coupons. Mm-hmm. Remember you get the paper, it's still, but not as much. You'd get all the inserts in the newspaper and it'd be like, okay, this market would have, pork chops for this amount of money. And if you bought, 3 cans of peas, you'd get, 5 cents off, whatever it was, right? But different markets had better prices on the different things. So she used to, in her weekly shopping, she would maybe go to 3 or 4 different grocery stores.
Nice.
So I would ride along with her.
And each lucky.
Grocery store, and I remember, there was Vons and Ralph's and Dale's, which doesn't exist anymore, and I forget the other one. I think it was probably Albertsons or something like that. And each one had a spinner rack in it of comic books, and I would go with her, and she'd be shopping, and I'd be looking at the comics. And a lot of times, the grocery stores were in kind of a little strip mall. Not all of them, but some of them. And in that strip mall would also be a liquor store, which had a comic rack, more like the wooden magazine rack as opposed to the spinner rack. Or there would also sometimes be a drugstore, like a Thrifty, Save-On, Osco, whatever they call them, kind of store also that would have comics. So when my mom was doing the shopping, I could hit the spinner rack in the grocery store and then also hit another shop in the same area. Like there was the one grocery store, there was a liquor store. It was on one corner, of this, main street intersection.
Right.
And right across the street on the opposite corner was a liquor store. And then there was another liquor store in the same strip mall as it. So when she went to that grocery store, I'd go to the grocery store, I'd hit the one liquor store, and then I'd cross over and I'd walk across the street and I'd hit the other liquor store. So
nice.
Easy
pickings.
That was even without having to ride my bike places. It's just thinking back on it, I haven't thought of this in years, but I probably had, when you add them all up, there were 15 or 20 places that I was able to find a spinner rack or a magazine rack full of comic books. That is a lot of places.
That is a lot of places. I totally envy you with that because, like I said, for me, it was once a week, usually a Sunday, and we'd go into town because we lived kind of out in the middle of nowhere for a while there. Go into town, and I had, 1, 2, 3. I had 3 stores that I had to hit. They were all drugstores, pharmacies, small chains just like yours. And if I didn't get the books then that was it. There was, we couldn't go there during the week, and by the end of the week the books changed over anyway. It's like a weekly thing almost, it seemed like.
Were you aware of the day that the new comic books came in? Because
no.
I
didn't matter.
I was oblivious to the concept of New Comic Book Day before a comic shop opened. And I mean, I know some people were really tuned into the, liquor, drugstore, grocery store, whatever, and they knew what day the guy came and brought the new books, and they would make a point of being there on that day.
No, I never
so have
that.
Like first dibs on the, whatever the guy unbundled.
Right.
I was completely oblivious to that when I was a kid. I just knew that there were all these places, and I would go and I would flip through the racks, and I could pretty much find almost any book that I wanted. And when I started collecting, it was rare that I would miss one. Some of the
you're killing me.
Spider-Man issue, the 121 that I missed. And I was like,
No, but now that I'm thinking about it, now that we're strolling down memory lane, I had no idea. And I think I had probably asked when the new books are in, because it may have been a situation where I went in and came in the following week and the same books were out. And I probably asked them, and it was always an old lady behind the counter, and she didn't know what I was talking about. Spider what? What? Who? Where's your mother? So I just chalked it up as, I know they come out once a month, but, like we've said before, the distribution was just magical because, you never know when the books came. It wasn't the same titles every month. Everything rotated in this bizarre fashion that forced us. It would have been nice if you had just had to go to Albertsons and that was it, instead of running around the 4 or 5 different places. But that was just the nature of the beast. We had to hunt for our goods, whereas the kids today, they are gatherers, and they just go to the shop and scoop up arms full of stuff that we had to chase down on our trusty steeds.
If you think of it, like how many pockets are on one of those spinner racks behind you? I mean, there's like, what, about 20?
Probably more than that. That's a big one. Let's see.
فايز اعمل لك معايا سندوتش جبنه.
Just you know why you and
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
صباح الخير يا استاذ توفيق. يلا يلا عشان الفطور، جايبه لك النهارده سندوتشات جبنه.
لا والله ماليش نفس. Just you know why you and I will by and by.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
قلت لك موزاريلا باندا يا عبد العزيز.
الاوردر ما فيهوش جبنه.
Just you know why.
والله هو.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
ايه ده؟ ما تيجي نجيب باندا يا بابا.
يا ابني ما جبنا حاجات كتير.
Just you know why you and I will by and
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
بابا مش هنجيب باندا يا بابا.
Just You know why? Why you and I?
هتاخدك كمان.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
Looks like it holds 15, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So that's a fairly big rack, though. Well, that's probably the average size, right? Yeah.
There's not how many slots are going down?
I thought it looked like 15. Well, hold on. Let me just take a look, Viv, for a second. Okay. Looks like there's about 10 slots. So 50 altogether.
So that's actually quite a big variety.
Yeah.
That's on rack. I was thinking it was less than that.
I mean, you can fill it up with lots of stuff. There's probably not big enough to hold everything that comes out in a month, I would think, even back in the day.
Well, I mean, it was certainly enough to hold all the Marvel books. I mean, it's if you wanted some of the off brands, I mean, Marvel and DC, I don't know how many books DC, I mean, later on, I mean, that was the other thing. It's like now Marvel and DC, you know, DC puts out, you know what, like 50 or 60 different titles.
Right.
Marvel puts out 70 or 80 titles. I don't know. So many. And then all the indie books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are literally probably in excess of 300. Well, there's a top 300, and that doesn't even list everything, you know, that Diamond puts out. So,
Right.
I mean, there are well over 300 different comics that come out every month now. Back then, it was way less than that, but it was probably still over 100. So, you know, over the course of a month, any given spinner rack would not have all the books that came out during that month. And that was why you had to hunt for them, because it was semi-random, right? On what actually showed up on your spinner rack.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there was a whole lot of scientific process to it. It got more advanced as time went on. Did I ever tell you about how we used to, when I worked for the magazine and book distribution company, you know, we put together a computerized system that tracked what was selling in what stores, so that, you know, we could stock titles at stores for maximum sales. You know, but a lot of this was like, you know, all the magazines, comics were like a tiny little fraction of what was at that time. This was in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s being put out. It was mostly egregious pornography magazines. You know? It's funny when you're in, like, you know, an office setting and you're like talking about,
oh my god,
you know, like you remember Married with Children, you know, Al always like Biggins magazine and stuff, you know, and just like it's things like that, you know. It's like, well, in this liquor store the Big Butt magazines really sell well, you know.
Oh
so
my god,
put more of those.
Yeah, we need more Big Butt over in wow, that's funny.
It's like different classes of perverts lived in different neighborhoods or something. So.
Oh, no, wait a second. Let's put on your thinking cap. Most of the stores that I went to had more than one spinner rack.
Mine didn't. I mean, I'm trying to think back. I mean, some of the grocery stores might have had two spinner racks. But if they did, one of them usually had the
Harvey
superheroes and, you know, Marvel and DC basically, and the other one had like the Archies and Harveys and Charlton and stuff like that.
Exactly. That's what I experienced also. And it took me a while before I would do both because, you know, when you're a teenager, you don't want to be seen looking at hot stuff. Yeah.
I did not buy a single, you know, Harvey or Archie or once I started reading Marvel comics, I really didn't read. And, you know, when I say I collect, you know, I started collecting with Amazing Spider-Man 88. That was my first book that got me collecting every month. I had read comics before that. Right. I had read Uncle Scrooge comics and Hot Stuff and Richie Rich and Little Dot and, you know, Baby Huey and Casper and all the whole different. But, I mean, you have like this vague, at least me, I have this like kind of general awareness of these books, but not specifics. You know, when I would, in later years, really got into the Carl Barks, and I would go back and I got my Carl Barks library, and I was reading my Uncle Scrooge and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I would read a story in there, and I would come back, this flood of memory. It was like, I remember reading this story where he's fighting Magica Dispel, and, you know, she's calling down meteors on him with her wand, trying to get the #1 dime off of him. So I had to have bought and read that comic, or, you know, they reprinted these, you know, they cycled through the same Carl Barks stories for years, you know, on those magazines. They just started at a certain point just reprinting everything.
Wow.
And not doing new material. So I'm sure I didn't have the original, but I had some reprint version of it.
Right. That's pretty funny because now I'm sitting here thinking something about the way the comic books were written. They kind of seared into my head much earlier than anything else. Now, like you know, I started collecting with Spider-Man, but I was reading a lot, you know, in the interim. I just wasn't hanging on to it or following it or really caring. I would almost guarantee that Archie was one of the first books that I actually read, and I have pretty much read parallel to everything else, even up to this day. You know, I'll read a couple of books a week and a couple more, and they'll be Archie. So, but I can't remember.
So you're still reading Archie comics?
Yes. Well,
I recently got back into reading Archie comics. So it's actually kind of fun, you know, to get back into that stuff after a certain point of time, you know.
Does it feel like you've never left?
You know, to a certain extent, there's, in the main Archie book, they've updated a few things, but, you know, some things kind of stay the same. I mean, you do have Kevin Keller now. You know, they got cell phones and this and that, and it's like they do their different things, but they haven't changed that much. But then again, Archie's been doing a lot of really cool stuff lately with their horror line with, you know, the Afterlife and Sabrina, and they're going to be coming out with a third title, which I haven't seen details on what that's going to be yet, but there's going to be a third horror title, and they're bringing back the Red Circle characters in a line called Dark Circle. And they did the first one, was the reboot of Black Hood. And it's pretty dark, but it was really pretty good. And they're bringing back the Shield.
Nice.
And they brought back the Fox. And, you know, so they're kind of updating their adventure line also. And then, of course, they did that Life with Archie, the magazine-sized one, which was kind of an alternate timeline where he was married to Betty on one half of the book and married to Veronica on the other half. And they hit some pretty mature themes in that too, where, you know, like Miss Grundy got cancer or she had cancer and she died. And,
wow,
you know, that was the one that ultimately Cheryl Blossom ended up with cancer. She went through chemo and all her hair fell out, and she became an advocate for, you know, cancer awareness. And Kevin Keller is a senator, and, you know, I think maybe Moose was the mayor of Riverdale.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
You know,
got to learn his real name.
That's the thing that Archie got killed, taking a bullet, I think, for Kevin Keller at the end of that series when they stopped doing that after 30 some odd issues. But they're rebooting Archie. It's coming out next month, maybe a new number, or maybe a couple of months. They're coming out with a reboot of Archie. Mark Waid is writing it.
Ooh, interesting.
It's like gonna have, like, you know, just like, wow.
That's I can't even wrap my head around that.
I've been reading a lot of different Archie stuff, and it's like I went for 40 years where I wouldn't touch an Archie book with a 10-foot pole.
Wow.
And, you know, in the last 5 years, I really kind of gotten back into Archie, and they're doing some stuff nowadays that is really, really interesting. So, I think, you know, I'm very happy with you know, how they're doing stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting in terms of the content and the marketing. And the one thing that's been consistent about Archie, you can always get it. And, you know, places like Walmart and Target, pretty much any grocery store, they're going to have the digest. So that keeps it in the public eye. Even, you know, even if you'd stop collecting, you're going to run into the book at some point, which is harder to do with most books because, you know, they're all in the comic shops now. So you're not getting that weekly interface. I'm talking strictly from a non-collector's point of view, but there have been times where, and again, the impulse buy, you could pick up a digest for $2.99, boom, throw it in a backpack. Great bathroom reading, whatever, but you just bought an Archie book, and that's what I was doing for years. Yeah, and I wasn't collecting every title every month, but, you know, I would if I saw a book, I'd grab it, why not? Price point's there, it's not, I don't have to be emotionally invested in the writer, you know, because I know there's not going to be this epic story arc that I'm going to have to pick up 15 issues for. It's an Archie book, you can start and stop anytime.
It's just true.
Yeah, the clothes are different, but it's still the gang from Riverdale. That's basically it, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
But that's that. No, go ahead.
Archie is... I miss the fact, you know, like Harvey went away, and those were another one that they were kind of timeless, you know? I mean, it's just like they would tell different-ish kind of stories, but there wasn't really like a through plot, you know, from Richie Rich to the next, you know.
I want to see how he got all his money. Yeah, that's a book I'd like to see Mark Waid write. Richie Rich.
But you didn't see anything like that, right? There was no through plot on that book.
No, and if it was very just broad. I mean, so broad it's just background. But I think that was the point of those books. And when people see those books, I think a lot of the non-readers equate all comic books. They, you know, paint it with that broad stroke that they're all kind of, you know, there's a big difference between Sad Sack and Sergeant Rock. There's a huge difference.
Well, I mean, Sad Sack was kind of like a sitcom. It was like Gomer Pyle to some extent, right?
Yeah.
It's just a sitcom kind of comic set in a military background. And a lot of those humor books, that they're the equivalent to the sitcom on TV, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you create some crazy situation, you put these characters in it, and then you just have some broad, you know, impetus happens to kick off the action, and, you know, go. These people react to, what's going on.
Yeah. Something weird happens. Sad Sack, winds up. Always at the last panel, he's like parachuting down on a warhead or something crazy, and Sarge is yelling at him. That's, but you know how you always know how the story starts and how it ends. It's the middle part that's always fun. So, and that could be said for Baby Huey, Casper,
Hot Stuff. Yeah.
Who was the little witch? Wendy, the good little witch. Yeah.
She was kind of a spin-off of Casper, right?
Mm-hmm. Casper's hot sister.
Yeah. There were a lot. I remember Stumbo the Giant.
Yeah. Remember Star Comics?
Oh, from Marvel?
Yeah.
I never read those.
Come on.
I was older, right? I mean, it's like I was a teenager. It's like you didn't buy like
I got a couple issues.
Dog or what was the
Scooby-Doo
Richie Rich clone? Royal Roy or something or
no, I can see it. I just can't think of the name. I have to look it up.
But they had like basically they would essentially rip off the different.
Yeah.
Here's Richie Rich, and he's a star character. Although I don't know, like Top Dog. I don't know. Was there a comic like that from Harvey?
Wow. No, I'm just pulling it up now. Founded 1984. Heathcliff, Muppet Babies, Peter Porker. Huh.
Yeah, or Spider.
Forgot about that. Yeah. Just going down. Wow, they had. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to go through the list here. We've got Air Raiders.
Air Raiders was that a comic? Was that not a comic? Was there a cartoon on that? Or
I think so.
Like it's
seems
very,
like a
very
tie-in.
close to a comic.
Yeah, there probably was. It said, but it continued under the Marvel imprint. First 2 issues under Star. Animax ran for a year. Rocky and Bullwinkle, I remember. Care Bears, Chuck Norris, Karate Commandos, Count Duckula, Defenders.
Count Duckula.
Yeah, Defenders of the Earth. That was
some of those are a little different than others, right? I mean, some were.
Most of these look like cartoon tie-ins and toy line tie-ins.
Right. I mean, like Air Raiders and Chuck Norris Karate Commando, and those were aimed at a different audience than Care Bears and Top Dog and those, right?
Yep.
I think they had like the little, which it's not a bad thing. I mean, you make like the little kid versions, but Marvel tried that recently. Recent being, I don't know, like 8 to 10 years ago, when they did their kid line of comics, which I think, to me, I would pick them up every now and again. And I felt like they were talking down to the kids.
Really?
And I didn't like them because they were dumbed down. I mean, like you'd have, for instance, Spider-Man playing Little League, in his costume, right?
Of course, yes.
To relate to the kids or something. It was just stupid. Whereas
Franklin Richards was a great book.
I think that, the Spider-Man book that we read when we were younger was accessible to that 8 to 12-year-old demographic, but it didn't talk down to us.
Right.
And put, kind of stupid situations into it. And I think that's better. I mean, it's different. Like nowadays they got like mature, people are getting their arms ripped off and shot and all kinds of really violent, crazy stuff. Or you got like Black Cat showering with like a little bit of mist covering her naughty bits. So you really don't cross that line. But that's not something you would necessarily feel comfortable giving to an 8-year-old kid.
Right.
You don't need to put those things into the comic, though. The comics that we read when we were younger, I mean, they were fairly all ages without talking down to the kids. And,
yeah.
I mean, I think that you can make a really young kids comic without talking down to the kids. And Marvel is doing that, I think, now more successfully than they did 8 or 10 years ago, because now they're putting out ones that are tied into their animated cartoons.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask
shown
about that.
on like Disney XD, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So they got like Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers and all that, and it's like the animated ones, which are they're action packed. They're
but just a little bit lighter.
But you don't have they're not going ridiculous to the point where Spider-Man is selling ice creams or something in the street or whatever kind of goofy thing that they would they try to tell the actual story, just kind of tone it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
For the kids.
Well, that's good. At least they're not pandering.
I like that better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it gets preachy, and I don't know why people still do it, it really shows. Talking about acquisition of comics, my dad was a teacher for 45 years. At one point in the 70s, he got a bunch of comics that were part of the curriculum, and it was Popeye talking about careers. So there was like a dozen issues in this.
Spinach farmer?
No, he went to every, to industry and construction and farming, and the stories would revolve around Popeye and his cast of characters getting involved with whatever particular career they're talking about, and then every page or so, every other page, breaking the fourth wall and describing to the kids what's going on. So those books came out at a time where I was just starved for comics, and I was buying literally everything I could get my hands on, and it still wasn't enough. So any type of comic that came across my path, I had to have, and I still have these books. So, but the thing I remember about it was whenever they broke the fourth wall and spoke to the kids directly, it didn't feel like he was talking down to me, but it did feel like he was talking like me, like I was a kid. So I think that's probably the big difference. You can be Mr. Exposition in a ham-handed way, but just don't talk to me like I'm reading Spidey Super Stories, because we used to have a term for kids that would read that. Even though it was a decent book, it just. A little simpler.
I never read Spidey Super Stories when it came out. In fact,
you're going to have the same retention with that book that you do with an Archie comic, because it is fraught with non-conflict. So it's just Spider-Man just doing nothing and waving goodbye.
They had all the bad guys in it. I mean, you'd have if you look at the covers of them, I mean, you'd have Spider-Man and you'd have Kingpin or Daredevil, or would they just playing Parcheesi or something in it?
No, it would be, instead of spending two or three issues like Stan would with Doc Ock, and there's just all this action going on, and there's the B plot line, and then the whole movement of the Marvel Universe. These are just stories. It's Doc Ock just robbed a bank, Spidey's gonna stop him. They don't really fight, but they kind of duke it out with words, and and in a half page, the story's done. And you leave the book remembering absolutely nothing other than the art was mediocre, and God, this is written for 5-year-olds, but I have to have it because I'm a Spider-Man fan. So
I kind of never, I don't know why I never bought those. I mean, maybe they were not on the rack when I was buying comics, because I can't imagine if I would have seen them that I would have passed them up.
No, you wouldn't have. Because, you're a Spider-Man fan, and this is Spidey Super Stories. Wow, I got to get this. And the other thing is, I don't know if Children's Television Network actually published the book through Marvel, but it was the Spider-Man that appeared on the Electric Company. They're tied in together, so I think that could be another reason why.
Oh, did they used to have like Easy Reader or something? On but he wasn't Sam Jackson, right?
No, it was Morgan Freeman, but
Morgan Freeman.
It's kind of scary because I just read a Spidey Super Stories not too long ago, and Easy Reader did make an appearance, so it just kind of like it took me out of the story, and it's just like this isn't really Spider-Man. I rationalized it in my head. He's just a character that vaguely looks and acts like Spider-Man, but I'm just going to leave him over here and go back to the live-action version that was on TV at the time.
That's a whole other...
That's a whole other episode.
Nicholas Hammond.
Yeah.
His gigantic hair.
Hey, you could say the same about Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
Except his hair just goes up. Wow.
He couldn't. That's the one thing about that is like he literally could not fit that hair into that Spider-Man.
If I'd stuck around on set a little bit longer, I could have found out how. But I was only able to see Electro, so oh well. So that's that. Let's wrap this up because I can hear the dinner bell dinging on my end. Even though your evening is just starting. What is it?
That's true. It is only 4:45.
Oh, good Lord. All right, buddy. I will get this one up as soon as possible, and let's try to shoot for Wednesday or Thursday. More like
it should work this week.
Thursday should be better. But,
okay.
Comic Spectrum.
Comic Spectrum. www.comicspectrum.com.
Bye, everybody.
Finest reviews that you can find and
news, reviews, and no blues.
I don't put that much news up anymore. The only news I really tend to put up is the comic sale stuff each month because I'm interested in that. I also put up, but they're just on the website, the solicits, and they always start going up around somewhere between the 15th to the 20th of the month. Even earlier. All the April solicits are for all the major companies are all on the web, which means they'll be in the previews catalog that comes out on the last Wednesday of March for April, which is books that will be on the stands in June of that. So really, the solicits that are online right now are all the stuff that's coming out on the stands in June. Gotcha. And you can see all those. You go to comicspectrum.com and click on the little previews catalog on the main page, and it'll bring you to a link aggregation where you'll be able to go to all the different publishers and see what they've got coming out. And I've got a history going back for a couple of years at this point, where you can go back and see what was solicited, in any given month.
Nice. All right. And with that, we'll call it a night. Good night, Bob.
Night, Rick.